assault rifles, otherwise known as ARs. Being one of the iconic duos of the game, often paired with SMGs, is the assault rifle tactical dolls. They're your alpha and omega to sustain the balanced DPS with a lot of utility. To better portray real-world assault rifles, ARs are given balanced stats focused around damage, HP, and evasion. Due to the synergy between SMG and AR tile buffs, the two are usually used together in the same squad. Both are easily obtainable early game and consume an average amount of resources when compared to rifles and machine guns, which is why they're usually recommended to beginners to level as their first squad due to their cost efficiency. Though they may have lower stats and damage when compared to machine guns and rifles, they're still viable late game outside of typical DPS checks because 1. They can sustain their DPS unlike machine guns who need to reload after every magazine. 2. Their prioritized targeting is different from rifles. Rifles will prioritize the back row while ARs will prioritize the front. 3. They can beat certain enemies which are hard for the other two classes to beat due to the affinity between them. 4. They have higher mobility, meaning they can beat certain bosses which require maneuverability. And 5. They can equip night vision unlike the other two classes, allowing them to easily fight non-armored enemies during night ops, as armored enemies have zero evasion and doesn't matter much when it comes to shredding them with machine guns or rifles. Though because they can't equip AP rounds, with the exception of 6p62, DPS against armored units will be penalized. You'll need the proper equipments and buffs to raise the AR's damage above the armor stat in order to properly handle armored units. Currently, all 5-star ARs are obtainable through construction and the good majority of them are able to perform to high standards. This is also the case for most future 5-star ARs with the exception of OTS 14 and ART 556, which are event rewards. Even outside of the 5-star roster, there are plenty of 4-star and 3-star ARs that are able to pull off similar performance. Now, to categorize ARs based off their skills, most ARs can be classified under one of the three categories. 1. Self-buffing DPS ARs, 2. Grenadier ARs, and 3. AR buffers. For self-buffing ARs, they usually have an initial cooldown of 5 seconds or less and can buff themselves to raise their DPS. They're able to consistently pull off high sustained DPS and are generally used quite often. They're generally classified once again as either damage buffers or rate of fire buffers. Usually damage buffers are better since there's a hard cap in the rate of fire stat which doesn't exist for damage, meaning it's easier to optimize them. Also, if an AR hasn't high enough damage, she can shred through armored units as well. Now that doesn't mean rate of fire buffing ARs aren't usable, they just need to be used in the proper scenarios. Then you have Grenadier ARs. These ARs fires off grenades that do heavy AoE damage to enemies. Though it does deal a lot of damage, the initial cooldown is pretty long and you can't expect a lot of normal DPS from these ARs compared to the self-buffing ones. But there is an exception, being Zas M21, a 5-star doll who will be added in the future, as her initial cooldown is only 4 seconds. Continuing on, Grenadier AR's effectiveness is proportional to the amount of enemies bunched up together by the time they fire, which is usually completely random. Also, because of how the game is coded, where the AR will fire the grenade is completely random and the user has no control over it. So the unfortunate scene of only one enemy being killed can most definitely happen. But regardless of all these cons, the grenades are undodgeable regardless of the evasion stats of the enemies, and can sometimes wipe out entire squads out, which is great. After Grenadiers, we have the AR buffers. These ARs can buff other ARs while still receiving buffs from the SMG tiles. To this date, there are only 2 ARs that exist in this category, being M4A1 and Ribby. Not only can M4 buff other ARs through her tile buffs, she can also buff her own damage with her skill, making her an all-rounded AR. Ribby, on the other hand, can buff other ARs with both her tiles and skills, making her a great utility support AR even though her DPS isn't the best. Those are the main 3 categories, and now we come to the exceptions, the members of the AR team. Though they did go through some revisions and standardizations back in the 2017 January patch on the original Chinese server, they're still very different from your everyday AR, with M4A1 being able to buff other ARs through her tiles being a showcase. Also, they're only obtainable once through the story mode, so don't ever scrap them. Now to talk about as why they're different, M4A1 being able to buff other ARs through her tiles is one showcase. And even though M4's equipment slots mirror that of a typical AR's equipment slot, M4 SOPMOD 2, AR-15, and M16 have very different and unique equipment slots. SOPMOD and AR-15 can equip 2 different sights and high velocity rounds, while M16 can equip high velocity rounds and 2 different T-Doll equipments. Not only that, M16 is the only AR that is able to tank as she has armor stats and can equip Kevlar plates for one of our T-Doll slots. And that just about sums it up for the AR team. Now going back to talking about the average ARs again, although they can equip exoskeletons at level 80, you can't forget what their primary job is: to deal DPS. So let the SMGs do their jobs and let the ARs do theirs. And that just about does it. The next episode will be on the breakdown of the SMG class, and I'll have a slideshow going on here to show which ARs you should be looking out for in terms of rarity to cost efficiency to performance.